for our virtual conference, you got to experience 5 minutes of Michelle Cody.
Yeah.
Sarah and I both said, oh no, we got to get her back, and we got to have more than 5 minutes. Right? So we are so excited to have Michelle Cody as our kickoff keynote speaker. And one of the things that I think is amazing is Michelle's passion and just her amazing energy, but also she is in the classroom. And I know many of us have been in the classroom and have kind of moved on. We either support folks who are in the classroom, or we teach pre-service, or we do other kinds of work in the field. But for those of y'all, and who here is in the classroom? Who here is in the Thank you for your service. And Michelle, and not just is she a classroom teacher, she's a middle school classroom So she teaches 6th grade math in San Francisco, and really believes that social justice education can change the way that students engage with math. And I'm not going to say any more, I'm just going to let Michelle do it. And please help me welcome Michelle Cody. For you as thanks.
This is so
nice. Apron.
Yeah.
Teacher pie.
I'm not gonna. This is beautiful, but I have a beautiful dress on.
Yeah,
so
we're not gonna.
This is like, on a side note, I'm launching a new project with my kids. We're talking about a ratio unit. I'm gonna turn that on. Okay, I'm coming. I had to make sure that it wasn't on when I was in the bathroom. So, it's not that kind of party. We're launching a brand new unit 3 of our ratios, and I'm actually not going to talk about it, but this is exciting because it is called Designer Drinks. And so my students are creating a drink using ratios, right? And so we have like a whole rap video launch party, and then I had this, like I had an apron on, and they're in like a chef hat, and it was this whole big thing. And so this is gonna be so cute. Like they're all excited. They're like, "Do well, Miss Cody." I was like, "It's okay if I don't. I still have a job." So. Alright, so hi friends, how are y'all? Most of y'all don't know me, and that's cool because like when you were introducing me, everybody was all like. The other speaker, they're like, yeah! And then Julie came, oh, yeah! I'm like, Michelle, like, and it was like my 5 friends, and that's okay. Because by the end, all of y'all will be a friend of mine, and we're all excited, so that's all. The expectation is low, so therefore I'm excited about that. So, my presentation disappeared. I don't know where it went. Hold on. I think I had tech issues when I did the Ignite last year too. Okay, I found it. I'm good.
I don't remember. I just remember your fan.
I did my fan, yeah. It was the whole Beyonce moment. Like I had big hair and I had a fan. It was amazing. Yes. And all my life, all I wanted to do was be like Beyonce. Okay, you're gonna have to help me because I didn't. You can practice this too. Yeah, this one.
Perfect timing.
She wanna.
No, why do you apologize? Let me actually tell you a little bit about my Asilomar history. So I started the social justice movement with my homie Brian Waldman, who was not here with us. Not like he's physically here. I mean, he's not like gone. He's just not here. And so we applied to like do a presentation, and the Asilomar was like, no. And then there was a rejection, and I was sad, and I was like, oh. And then the next year, I applied again, and not with Brian, because Brian had moved back to the classroom, he was no longer my coach. And y'all were like, okay, yeah, we'll give you a shot. And I was like, yes. And that was 2019. And then April, I met April through Angela, and she was like, maybe this Ignite thing. And I was like, you're not gonna give me Ignite. And then April sent me an email. She's like, do you wanna do this Ignite thing? And I was like, yes, I wanna do this Ignite thing. So in the summer, December 2020, I did an Ignite. And now, I'm your keynote. Check that out, guys. It is like the biggest mama I made it moment in my life. So if you feel the need, if I say something that inspires you and or offends you, you can just tweet me at Simply Michelle. Hopefully it's more inspiring and less offensive. So my title, Fighting Like Our Lives Depend on It, creating space for all students to see themselves as math people. So there is going to be some times on here that I'm going to read to you as if you're my kindergarten students. And there's other times I'm going to ask you to read. There's going to be times where we engage. We're just going to have a good time. I promise I will try not to keep you here till 9 o'clock because I'm pretty sure you're exhausted. We're going to start off by a little call and response. I love to sing to my kids. They don't love to sing back to me in the beginning, but we make it happen. So we're going to do a little call and response. And I'm going to say it. And then you're gonna respond. So that's a whole, call, response, justification into it. And so I'm gonna say it, and you're gonna do it in your best voice with the mask on, smiling, as we kind of connect and set together. So I'm gonna start with KK Kool-Aid, KK Kool-Aid, KK Kovisa, KK Kovisa, Kovisa Langa. Ovisalanga, Kakashilanga, Kakashilanga, Umadande, 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 Umadande. That's how we kind of get the class kind of like calm, depending on what's happening. So we're all kind of grounded together. We just sang together. Check our album out. There's going to be some culture colloquialisms that I'm going to drop. You should probably Google it, figure it out, write it down if you don't understand. Don't let it stop you from not knowing what's happening. At some point I might say fool. I might call you a fool, I might call my kids a fool. It is a term of endearment. It actually doesn't mean fool, it just means this is how much I connect with you. All right? I have been doing this work for a very long time. I know, you're like, how long? Like over 20 years I've been working with children. I know, right? Because you guys are supposed to be like, oh, 20 years, really? I know. Thank you. I'm gonna add you to the PowerPoint at the end of the So like any good math teacher, you have like their math goals, right? So our math goals. So mathies, that's y'all, will be able to understand the impact of social justice math and student engagement and hopefully make a plan of action. I want y'all to engage with each other. I want you to listen to stories of impact. We're going to review some math lessons and then rinse and repeat. So, if you came here and saw my title was like, oh, she's going to give me all the answers. I'm here to tell you, no, I'm not. Definitely not. More importantly, if I was going to give all the answers, I would not be doing it for free at Asilomar. If I was able to monetize it as a woman of color, I would have been like, let me go and sell it. For far too many years, people have taken the ideas of people who look like me, and this is not the space that's going to happen in, my friends. So I'm going to start this off. My title was Fighting Like Our Lives Depend on It, right? And so when I was in grad school at USF, my professor, Dr. Carmagnan, was like, you need to teach like people's lives depend on it. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is so hyperbolic. Like, why is he being so intense? What is he talking about? I'm just here to teach the kids ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and then hopefully impact some kids that look like me. Well, he wasn't being hyperbolic at all. In some of these instances, The engagements or lack thereof that we have with our students can be that reason why they disengage with school, stop feeling good about themselves, and kind of check out. And what's the crazy part about it is that because we are successful, because we've got our papers, because we've made it, we fail to realize that these single moments of interactions that we have with our children can be the difference of making them feel good about themselves. So we're gonna start with a little mental meter. Go ahead and pull out your phones and you can take a picture. There's some questions that we're gonna ask real quick. Grab the coming, give you a minute to get the code or to. Is it working? Mm-hmm.
I'm a math teacher. I can't afford it.
We got the code in there for you, that's okay.
I got it.
Oh, I need to move. Yeah, you can do the questions, go ahead. I'm gonna show it in a minute. Okay. Don't worry, it's fine. There's that one. Alex, don't they stop? I need your help behind me. You should answer the questions as I'm trying to get this up so we can see. Everybody, give a round of applause to Alex. He's actually my yeah.
Just continue. I don't home.
There it is. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Okay, so the question I asked you is, how did you feel as yourself as a math person? And I wanted to think about like, as an elementary school person, middle school person, high school person. It's okay. Is that better? Yep. Again, okay, so if we're looking at this data, right, because we're data folks, we can see that, like, I actually am very surprised by this because I would have thought most of y'all would have felt more mathy in elementary school, right? Because when they get to middle school, something happens. They come into my space, into my classroom, and they're like, I don't know how to do math. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, I don't. It's fractions, I don't know how to do math. You think like all the math is it's just fractions. My mom told me it's fractions. I don't know how to do fractions. I'm done with Cody. I'm like, okay, cool. Challenge accepted, right? Yeah. Because it's like now I have to convince you that not only are you a math person, but your mom, your dad, your cousin, your auntie, your uncle, they're all math people. You don't know how many times when I get inside of a lift or I'm going somewhere, and the lift driver is like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, do I want to do it today? Sure. I'm a math teacher. Oh my God, you're a math teacher. I am so bad at math. I hate math so much. And I'm like, only 3 more minutes. Cool. I cannot believe, like all the math and all this. and you're like, yeah, okay, sir, ma'am, do you have a job? Yeah. Do you pay your bills on time? Yeah. Do you get up in the morning? Yeah. Do you know how to figure out from point A to point B? Yeah. Do you go to the grocery store and you figure out how much food you need all the time and you make sure that you don't overdraft your bank account? Yeah. Guess what, fool? You're a math person. And I'm like, but I can see why they don't think that they're a math person. We're gonna try this one more time. Alice, I believe that this is gonna happen without your assistance. Woo! That's not gonna happen again, that's fine. All right. So, I want you all to do a turn and talk and tell me, when did you decide that you were a math person? That's like a turn and talk to each other. Yo, so 3 minutes is not a long time. You're trying to go from your costume to the bathroom, but when you're on stage, 3 minutes is a long time. All right, so today I'm going to tell you a story because that's how I kind of communicate with my students. That's how I communicate with most folks. I tell stories. I want to talk about my journey, where I came from, how this all started, how it's going, and what's next, all right? So I'm going to share some of my proprietary secrets with you, my friends, because my whole goal in life is to hopefully spark at least one individual in here to try to do this work, to try to do something different, to impact these babies, because at the end of the day, this is what we're doing this for them, right? We want to believe in them. All right, so this is who I am. That's so this is my parents, and my dad who's like 60 something still has that same amount of hair, like how I am. So I am a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, and I'm a teacher. My educational pathway, I spent most of my life in public schools. I went to Lakeshore, Baptist. If you've heard of Lowell and the controversy, I get it. And all of this stuff had, I forgot to city college in there. I actually, after high school, did not go straight to university. I went to community college. I'm a community college graduate. Thank you very much. And I went to Howard University. I love my alma mater. It is also in the news a lot right now, so it's like I have some hot listings on here right now. And then I went to the University of San Francisco to get my master's. And I am a proud math teacher at SWSC. Shout out to my husband. And I'm a professor at USF. It's cool, right? They're just, I see why you like to do, but I like the babies. Like, adults just stare at you, they ask you questions, they're really obsessed with A's, and it's just, there's some programs I've been a part of, Black Teacher Project, Trellis, and Surge. So, Michelle Alexander Cody failed math quite a few times, my friends. I'm talking about, I failed geometry in high school, I know for sure. I failed applied calculus in college, that's why I couldn't graduate on time. I failed math quizzes, I failed pop quizzes, I failed tests, I failed homework. And I 100% didn't think I was a math person, right? And the saving grace was I have personality, right? So people were like, oh, she's really smart, I'm very articulate, like I'm a big idea person. So at no point in my life did me not feeling like a math person equate to me not being successful. Because I had things that you people consider great, and therefore I was okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, like, on these standards of all the things that are great, I checked some of those boxes. I did check the math box, but I checked enough boxes that people were like, she's gonna be okay. So I was very privileged in that. I didn't know I was privileged in that, but I was, right? I was able to usurp this system, this complicated, crooked, nasty system that plagues our babies all the time, right? Because I had enough wins, enough pluses to be on the right side of the equation. So when you Google mathematics, that is hella white. Like, look at this. How can I even see myself as a math person if this is what Google says is math? Yeah. Google is like, let me get the algorithms together. And like, don't check it. Don't be like, hey guys, what should we throw in? Now Google's like, nah, this is it. And guess what? Because Google said it was it, who else believes that? Right? These babies who are not, they're not, I mean, come on now. We live in a world where folks repost fake news on Facebook as the truth, as adults. So if these people with high level degrees can't disaggregate data, truth, understanding, sources, anything, so why would our babies do the same, right? So if I'm looking up here and I'm seeing this, I'm already like, yo, this ain't even for me. Right. I'm not even a part of this. So why should I care? So I've given up without knowing that I've given up. And that's the crazy part. They don't even know they've given up. They just know that the world has shown them who is a math person, and baby, they ain't it. So, how do you show up? This is my son. My little, beautiful, very annoying, I have a middle school child. Somebody should have told me that I should have quit middle school when he got into middle school, because it's like I'm at school and then I go home and I'm like, it is like the cycle of abuse. It is not okay. It is not okay. yeah, like, he's like mad at me about like random stuff. He's like, you just don't love me enough. And I'm like, I'm at the hospital, what? Okay, that's fine. But my kiddo wasn't like me, right? He's very calm, he's very quiet, and unfortunately, he has those minuses that tell him that he is not a school person or a math person. So when he goes, so we were going to elementary school, they were like, yeah, he doesn't know his times tables. They're like, yeah, he doesn't know how to like computate or add really quickly. So Matthew, like, he struggles in math. He's gonna really struggle in math forever. And I'm like, and so he hears that. He sees it with his classmates and he internalizes it. And it doesn't help that your mom's a math teacher. So people are like, oh yeah, if your mom's a teacher, no, that's not how it works. Like, when your parent is a teacher and you're struggling in school, it's somehow, they internalize it like double, right? Because they're like, well, my mom does it for other people, my dad does it for other people, but I can't get it, so something must be wrong with me, right? And so now we're trying to unpack all of the damage that's happening at school. But guess what? The schoolhouse has him way more than I do, right? And that's what people fail to realize. We engage with our babies more than their families do, majority of the year. So those little words, those comments, those actions that we're doing, those little micro, macro, grand ass aggressions, they start to sit on their chest. He's great at strategy games. He can see patterns and execute it, but he repeatedly internalizes that he's not a math person. When I play games with Matthew, I play to win because he's playing to win too. But if you look at the 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade standardized testing or standards, nothing says anything about you being able to see patterns. Nothing ever says that you're able to play strategy games. They're like, do you know how to find the slope on the slope intercept? You don't? You a fool. Einstein, right? And so now he's internalized that, well, I don't know how to do this. So this is how this all started. I was in grad school, and I met this young woman named Dr. Carrie Coca. Yeah, I love Carrie. And she was like, oh, I'm like working on my dissertation. So this is she wasn't a doctor yet, she was just Carrie Coca. Oh, not just, that's rude. I'm sorry, Carrie, I didn't mean just. Carrie Coca. So she was like, I'm writing my dissertation. I would love for her to come into your classroom. I think that you are what I'm looking forward to. I'm trying to do math teachers who do social justice math. And I was like, oh yeah, dude. I have never done that before in my life, but I was like, I'll sign up because you were excited about it and I want to help you to get to your process, right? I want to help you out. So a year comes by and Carrie's like, all right, are you ready? And I'm like, yes, I'm ready. Let's do this. So Carrie came and sat in my class for, it felt like weeks, in the corner, taking notes. And I felt kind of judged. I was like, I haven't done anything spectacular yet, nothing social justice-y. I'm just engaging with my students. And I was like, I have to just kind of like dip my toe in there, right? Because as a math teacher, y'all know this, if somebody comes into your room and it looks like you're not doing math, they're ready to like hang you out to dry, right? If they feel that the students are not engaging in whatever little whack math lesson that they have in the book, then you're not doing your job. Oh, I'm not talking about art. We have great math lessons. I'm not talking about not talking about my school. But so I was like, I gotta get started. So I started, oh wait, this is actually Carrie's video. Hold on.
Michelle partnered with me for my dissertation research, and it's really through being in her class. So I got to learn so much about.
Oh, you can't hear it because it's, sorry.
And learning more about trauma-informed care and healing-informed practices. I'm really excited. She and I have a chapter that's going to be coming out soon. And it's really my honor to get to work with Michelle in our work together around social justice mathematics.
So, you only heard half of it, that's cool though. Okay, so we start out with this lesson, right? The standards, because at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that if anybody walks into my room, I can say, we're engaging in this math, and this is the standards, and this is how we're doing it. So, we started, there was a woman named Kimberly Foster who has a podcast, and she had this video that she was talking about Blue Ivy. Blue Ivy, if you do not know, because you're under a rock somewhere in the world, the eldest child of the great Beyonce and her husband Jay-Z. And people are online calling this little girl ugly. And at that time, she was like 5 years old. And people were like going in on a 5-year-old, right? Really going in. So I was watching this video with Kimberly Foster, and she started throwing out some terms with me, misogynistic noir, the fact that folks thought it was okay to talk about a 5-year-old online, to call her names and ugly. And I was just like, this is a lot of negative stuff. Wait a minute. We're talking about negative and positive numbers right now because we're talking about the number line. So I was like, what should I do? So I was like, I'm going to have my babies look at these different tweets. And so, first of all, I showed them the video. And they got to have conversations about how they felt about what they saw in the video. Because everybody knows someone who's been bullied online or they've seen someone been attacked online, right? So there's our common ground, right? You may not know the math thing, but you know this thing, right? So I'm gonna bring you in. And so now, I'm having them look at these tweets. I'm sorry, but I think Blue Ivy is an ugly baby. So now, I'm giving them two colors. I give them green and orange. You're gonna color what words you feel are positive, what words you feel are negative. And then you're gonna plot those on the number line. Ha 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 ha. I'm getting a little plot number, negative and positive numbers. Now, the crazy thing about it is, the value of the negative number and the value of the positive number, the absolute value is going to be the same because it's the same tweet. So now I get to talk about what letters or what words I felt were positive, what words I felt were negative with my partner. And if we look at those lessons, we're like, wait, well, I said it was this number negative and this number positive, and you said this number negative and this number positive. But our absolute value was the same. So now my students are engaging in the fact that they were able to choose the numbers, and I was able to control it because I knew the answer. At the end of the day, there was 13. I could look around and be like, boom, 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 boom. Did you get 13? Did you get 13? In my brain. I'm not saying that out loud, but I'm able to check it while they're engaging in this work. And so then I was like, I'm on fire. I got some good characters. Like, I was like, oh, this was amazing. I was like, I know. In class, there were 6 bears, and they were on it. They were talking about Blue Ivy, and they were walking out the room talking about the math, right? Walking out the room. So in that lesson, I exposed them to Twitter, tweeting, social justice, misogynistic noir. We talked about reactions. I got them to write a response on what they're thinking in a math class. How about ELA standards?
Yes.
Right? And at the end of the day, right, they were able to connect what they learned to the math. When they walked out the door, they may not have been able to be like, hey, Miss Cody done really revved up the math class, but they were able to have conversations that eventually would spark interest with either their families, with other people on campus, a spark, and Amber, that's all we need. So, I was sitting downstairs in the main corridor next to at my school with my partner, with my coach, Brian Walden. And I'm like, all right, I wrote this one lesson, I'm ready to go. Brian, let's go. And so we looked at this. And this is the original lesson. It's no longer a lesson in our thing anymore. There's still hot air balloons. And so I was sitting there looking at Ryan, and I'm like, excuse my language, it's a hot air balloon situation. And I'm like, I can pull on my passport, and I got hella stamps in my passport. I couldn't get past. I'm like, are we starting? Like, where are we starting? Where are we going up? What's happening? It just became too confusing. It was like, it doesn't make sense. Like, what city kid? How many of y'all have been in a hot air balloon? Wait. I need y'all to look. This is statistically insignificant. It ain't nothing going for this to be a brilliant thing, right? So, and good for you for being honest. So I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So how can I get my students to grapple with the math when they can't even grapple with the concept?
Right.
Right? I can't talk about hot air balloon if I've never experienced it. This is Brian.
Hi, my name is Brian Coleman. I had the privilege of working with Michelle Cody, learning how to create social justice math lessons with grade level standards. This empowered me to try it in my own classroom. In one lesson, my students compared ratios through studying asthma hospitalization rates in different neighborhoods in our city. They brought their curiosity, community knowledge, a desire for justice, and intellectual strengths to task. This made a huge difference for their engagement and work completion rates, and it's invigorated me as well.
Brian wasn't doing that before we started this work. Imagine you using ratios to talk about asthma and health in your city. So students can look and see that there is a problem in their city. And so when they go home and they're talking to their families, they're talking to their friends, they're like, I'm talking to you about this problem and I'm engaging with the math, but I don't even realize how much I'm engaging in that. So this is the objectives for this one. Placing positive numbers on number line, understanding real world context, and being able to go up and down number line, right? So me and Brian were talking, I was like, Brian, this doesn't make sense. What do all my babies understand? I was like, they all understand trains, like the train, like the train to get to school, right? The back and forth of a train. And I'm like, most kids have been on public transportation. This makes more sense to me than it does a hot air balloon. So, okay, that's fine. So I created this lesson called Akila and her gumbo. And so in this lesson, I had the students go to different grocery stores to pick up ingredients for a gumbo recipe. They had to get on the train because where they lived, there was no access to healthy foods, right? So you have to get on the train, gotta go 40 blocks up, you have to go 50 blocks down south, you have to walk, you have to move. And again, all of this stuff had them thinking about the math and then talking about a real issue. We watched a video about the new term is actually no longer food deserts, food apartheid. And we watched a young woman who had to get on the bus to the Walmart in Texas, and it took her an hour and a half on the bus to get there because she wanted to get her kids access to healthy foods. She had to go food shopping and then go back. That's a 3-hour trip, my friends. 3 hours. 3 hours that she's on the bus, 3 hours that she's on with her kids, 3 hours that she could be doing something else productive for her family. These are the sacrifices that she has to make that a lot of us don't even think about, right? So I got the kids talking about this, right? We're talking about moving back and forth on this number line. We're talking about Akila, and then I have them engaged, like, how do you think Akila feels about her neighborhood and her space? Because let me tell you something, when your space doesn't have something, it makes you feel like you're not worth it. Right? And as educators, you know this. When you look at a school that has more resources, when you look inside your classroom and you're like, I ran out of copy paper, so I can't even make copies, this all impacts the way that we navigate our spaces, right? We can't have this lesson because we don't have any more copy paper. I would have loved to do this activity, but I don't have these resources. So now I have to change, I have to pivot. And eventually it impacts the way that we engage with our students, the way that we engage in our classrooms, the way that we engage with this work. And that's why people are leaving. So if you as an adult get to lead this scenario, think about it as a child. If I'm here in my scenario, my situation, my community, which is beautiful, because don't get me wrong, they love their community. And that's the crazy part about it. I'm not telling your community is bad. There's nothing wrong with your community. It's the conditions that society has felt is needed for your community to unthrive. Because that's the thing. You're not supposed to thrive. And so now the students are internalizing all of these things. And instead of them letting them sit in it and feel like, oh, my community must have done something wrong, we must be bad. Nah, we start to look at the numbers. We start to have them have conversations. We have them look at different videos and have perspectives. Because guess what? They may be 11 and 12, and one day they're going to be voters. They're going to be running companies. They're going to be out there making changes. And so if we can plant those seeds right now, right, for them to see the systemic things that are impacting their communities and other communities, then those are going to be the game changers. So then I got all excited. I'm like, all right, let me up my level. So then I started talking about the story. So I took that Aquila and the B and I changed it to Michelle because I was like, it's gonna be my name. And I had my secretary in my school, Karis, draw some pictures. And so this year when I launched this lesson, instead of me just reading this paragraph, I read my babies a whole story. And we talked about the sun piercing through the morning skies and her getting excited about making gumbo for her grandma's birthday, for her nana's birthday. And then we talked, and I slipped it in here. I'm like, her nana talks about stories of picking vegetables from her garden and walking to the local market with her cousins. You see how I snuck that in there? That her grandma was able to get everything that she needed from her community. And this story goes on for a couple more pages, and we talk about them getting on the train, going to the different stops. I throw the numbers in there, right? And I just engage, and I take my students on this story about this little girl named Michelle who just wants to make gumbo for her grandma, but has to go through so many things to do so. So by the end of that story, that 7-minute story, my babies are invested, right? And now it's time to do math. And so now they're looking at the story and they're drawing me maps around Aquila's journey. They're talking about how many blocks does she have to walk? What was the furthest distance from the blocks? What was the shortest distance from the blocks? All of these things they were able to engage in because they were invested in the story. And even when they got frustrated and they couldn't figure everything out, they wanted to finish this story. So I've been teaching this particular one for about 5 years. And this mama's daughter was in the first class that I taught this lesson.
Ms. Cody is an amazing math teacher that my daughter was blessed to have for her 6th and 7th grade years. I was sad when I learned that Ms. Cody wasn't able to continue on with Victoria as her 8th grade math teacher. Victoria, my daughter, was so excited about the social justice math that Ms. Cody taught her and how she brought real world experiences and situations into the teaching, such as the segment she did with Beyonce, another segment that she did including Gumbo, which had me very jealous, by the way. I am so proud of you, Ms. Cody. You are amazing and you rock. Congratulations.
I know, you told me, like, I just want to talk about the math and she went through all of stuff, that's okay. But, so her daughter's in 11th grade and she still remembers this, right? She was jealous because that first year I was really excited and I bought gumbo for all the kids. And we had a gumbo party, yeah. And the parents were like, can we come? And I was like, no, I'm still a teacher, it's like a small portion of money. But, so, into this stuff, right? We're getting them in on the conversation and understanding that this is an oppressive system that we're in, right? And so we need to change that. But in order for them to change that, they have to understand what is happening. They're able to see the numbers and tell their own story with numbers. So then I got on the hype, right? So at first I was just doing my 6th grade classes, but then I brought my 7th grade classes into this. So I had this one called minimum wage. And they started off by learning about the difference between minimum wage and living wage, right? Which blew their minds. They also saw scenarios where the CEOs of certain companies made 1,000 times more than the lowest paid employee. 1,000 times more, right? And so in this living wage, in this scenario, again, this is what I do. I get them with the hook. I ask them asking questions because they all have an opinion. And because I'm asking them a question about an opinion about a subject, I'm able to pull those kids who say that I'm not a math person into the conversation. So even when we're disaggregating the data or doing the math and they're feeling a little lost, they have already been invested because they know something. They know something doesn't add up. Oh, wait, that math didn't make really sense because I remember my dad saying that when he has to pay this company bill, majority of it goes here. So what about this? Again, they think they're not bringing something to the math conversation, but they are. They are. So we started talking about, this is actually one of my favorites because this is a 6th grade standard. Because we talk about he has a paycheck of $500, and then we're breaking it down. 1/3 goes to rent, 1/4 goes to utilities, 1/6, all that nasty math, right? All those nasty fractions that they talked about earlier. And so now we're talking about it, and we're figuring it out, right? And again, because they're investing in this story, they saw this video about this. They saw that the CEOs are making 1,000 times more than the other people. They saw that living wage and minimum wage is a problem in this country. And it's not because their mom or dad are lazy, right? It's not because their parents don't want to provide enough for them. It's because there's systemic things that are happening that are out of their control. And so through this process, we have now rehumanized their relationship to what they see as a problem with their families and their communities. And so we do this one. And then this lesson is for 7th graders. And what I like about this one, oh maybe this is also 6th grade unit. You know they all kind of blur together. I think in this one, on the 3rd page, after they do all the math, I ask them like, well, what things do you enjoy to do? So they're like, oh, well, I enjoy going to dinner, I enjoy going to movies, I enjoy hanging out with my friends. Okay, let's put some monetary costs to those things. And so they're putting monetary costs to those things that they like to do. And then they look at the page and they're like, I can't do it. And so it's like, oh, that reevaluates that time when someone shames someone who's on an EBT card because they want to have steak that one day. You don't deserve steak. You're on government assistance. Oh no, I do deserve steak because I am on government assistance. Because I'm working so hard to provide for my family that I have to let my children know that they deserve steak sometimes. How impactful is that for you to know that your paycheck is not equivalent to your work? And if I could teach our babies that at a very young age, these fools are going to be the game changers, not y'all. Right? These are the ones who are going to change what we need to do. So, let's talk about the impact of this, right? Because I've told you the stories about the math and all of this stuff, but the impact is very personal. So like I said, my first year doing this work, Carrie was in the classroom, and part of her dissertation, she interviewed like 4 or 5 of my students after every lesson, asked them how they were feeling, what did they learn, yada, yada, yada. So I think it's like half of the thing we were talking about, minimum wage, and just not being able to survive. And one of my kiddos, in the middle of talking to her, started crying. And she was like, what's going on? And he was like, we live in our car. And I come to school every day trying to survive. And my mom has a good job, but we still can't afford to live in San Francisco. So we sleep in our car every day just to make it up. Have we not had these conversations? And have we not destigmatized what's happening? Have we not used numbers to help change it? He wouldn't have shared that story. And because he was able to share that story, she was able to tell me, I was able to tell the social worker, and then we were able to get their family resources. Do you see what just happened here? Because we engaged in the math, we humanized him in the scenario, he was able to get what he needs for his family. He was able to know that it was not my mom's fault. It was not my fault. We were not bad people. We just needed what we needed to do to survive. And we were here to help. All right, so now you're thinking, what about you're a middle school teacher, what about the babies? What about the big people? So you think about these math concepts and you are able to rise them up or lower them down, but the conversation can still be the same. So I took some first grade math standards. I'm gonna focus on the first grade standards. I wrote this lesson for a first grade group. This is during COVID, and we're talking about what do you need for food. So we talked about what is your favorite thing to eat, what is your favorite recipe. And so the kids are talking about adding food into this cart, right? So we talked about, should everyone have access to food? Why is eating important? What kind of foods do you like to eat? Why do you think some people do not have access to food? These are first graders, and we're talking about this, right? So in this particular lesson, I had them drag and drop, right? The different, they were to choose 3 different food groups and drag and drop in here to get a total of 20 items. And we talked about these staple foods, right? These are staple foods that they will find at a local grocery store. We then elevated that lesson because we looked at a map of different neighborhoods. And they counted the blocks, right? And they marked every time they saw a corner store. And they marked every time they saw a grocery store. So now my babies are counting. We got that 20, right? Because we got to count up to 20. They're counting the blocks. They're marking it. We were able to get them to graph it, right? To color in how many how many corner stores do you see versus how many grocery stores. First grade, having the conversation, right? You can do that same thing when you think about statistics or calculus. How can we use looking at problems, health disparities, any kind of things that are affecting our communities? How can we take numbers to tell a story that will make it relevant to not just me, but to the world? I make a little math sentences because you know they got a little math sentences. And so I'm deeply committed to this work, right? Deeply committed to figuring out how I can engage my students to feel good about themselves. And so this year, now that we're back in person, I launched another unit for Unit 1. And so we did the Keynote story, but I also got them to, I made this video. I had this whole video. I was in outer space. My coworker, the librarian, Miss Maynard, shout out to Miss Maynard, made this whole video. Maybe I'll share it with y'all on YouTube. And it's about me going in outer space, and I found a planet called Planet Cody. And you appreciate that. Planet Cody, right? And in Planet Cody, it's one of those weird planets where the atmosphere is like Earth, so like you don't need a mask or you don't need like a helmet. It's like a good atmosphere being, right? Because some of my babies are like, what about the atmosphere? I was like, hey, no, just watch the video, baby. Just watch the video. And so they got put into groups, and they had to build a community. Oh wait, I'm gonna skip back. Okay, I'll go ahead. They had to build a community on a coordinated plan because I was one of the standards. And so they had to negotiate with each other about what was important. And so in some communities, their origin was a community center because that was important to them. There was other kids who were obsessed with electric car dealerships. I don't know why. But there was like 7 in their city. But regardless, they were able to do all this stuff. Students were able to identify what was important to them. They participated in the coordinated planning Zumba, which is pretty amazing to see 6th grade boys do coordinated planning Zumba. They were really into it too. They physically built their cities on the coordinated planning, right? So we went to Maker's Garage, they actually built these things. And they presented their cities to staff and was able to answer questions rooted in the math, explaining what is the distance between this part, this item in your city versus this item. What were the important things about for the city for you? And just really engaged with what was happening. They were excited. They were working on it, right? And then we had this presentation with their families. And I've been told that Black and Latino and Pacific Islander families don't show 10 minutes, right? People actually say that to me. That's crazy. So I called them, and I'm like, hey, I just called all our families. I'm like, hey, I know that some of y'all don't check your emails because at school, that's what we do. We send emails to families to be like, well, you don't care about your kid because you didn't answer the email. Right. but not everybody engages in email, and that's a whole nother systemic problem. Maybe they'll invite me back in 4 years and we can talk about that. But I called them all, I texted them, and it was like, hey, we're having this event. I had 100% participation with all of my family members. They were so excited. On top of that, y'all, I gave the same district unit test that I would have given every year after doing this project, right? 84 of my students who have IDPs got a B or higher. 84%. There was nothing extra on the test. They were just able to muscle through and ask questions, right? 100% of our Pacific Islanders got a B or higher on the test. 72% of African American kids got a B or higher on my test. They were doing the work. And then the kids who did not do well on the test, they knew that it was okay. They were like, yo, I didn't get it, that's fine. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna try it again. Because that's the important part. It's okay to fail, it's okay to fall. It's about getting back up again.
Yeah.
Right? It's about making sure that you know that you are not your F. So every time I give a test, I'm like, babies, we're gonna say this together. What is it? I am not my grade. Say it! I am not my grade. Because you gotta remember the beginning, I failed classes. And look at here, I'm sitting in front of y'all, telling y'all something, not eating it up. So clearly I am not my grade. As soon as we allow our students to see that and see themselves, that'll be a game changer. So we can all do this together. Now we're going to go back to the Zoom here. Back here, clearly. Okay, so now, you can do this one. And hopefully, we're going to try this out. It's going to try, it's going to happen. It's going to just... But that's not the one I want.
But we need your QR code.
Oh, I got all excited. I was like, I just want this to work. Huh?
Your question in the Mentimeter is what are some topics you can use?
Oh, sorry. Secure social justice lessons. What are some topics? Think about food apartheid. Maybe you're thinking about housing. Maybe you're thinking about. So I wanted to kind of create a list because one of the problems I feel like when people start to think about doing this work, they don't know where to start. So if all of these growing minds can start to kind of cultivate a list, we can share this out. And we can start somewhere. So, and then we'll see what's bigger if I can get this to work. Is it this? Nope.
No, it is that one, but you gotta go back.
I think it's this one. Oh. Wait, is it this?
Yeah. But now go back. See?
Oh, yeah. Oh, snap. Wait. Is this say, what does it say? I don't want to add I want to go, I think here. Very good. Awesome. I'm not going to present because it just too long. So look, it seems like housing and healthcare is a big thing for y'all. Transportation, payday, food insecurity, music, climate, family, employment, mental health care, homelessness. It's like, every time you add something, it resets. You're like, what's happening? I will make sure that that you get access to this. Is that a thing? Can I give them access to this?
Yes.
Okay. I'll give you access to this. But I wanted to show this to you because it's about getting these ideas started. I told you, Carrie sat in my room for weeks before I got started. And she just looked at me, and I just looked at her, and we just looked at each other. And it wasn't until I dipped my toe into that water that I was able to be like, I can do this, right? I can do this. So let's try this again.
Yeah.
See, Alex, I don't need you no more. Let me not get too excited. Okay, so I want to help you get started in this process, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't teach this in grad school, right?
No.
They barely teach us a lot of things in grad school. Let's not get started on that. But no shout out to any of the professors I'm not naming. I know y'all got this. But I want us to think about how we can design this. So I created this designing a social justice like graphic organizing. Because I'm like, I want us to start to think about ideas that we can do together. Yes, ma'am.
Can we get a link to that?
They'll be on the CMC website after the conference.
Good. Okay,
There you go. And I just ask that if anybody asks you, you just say that I made it. Because like I told you before, like, I am not a stereotypical looking math teacher. And so all of my intellectual property that I give out in the space needs to be recognized. Because people are not going to use it. So anyways, you start to draft these ideas about the units. YouTube is my favorite thing. I watch videos. And I start to watch these YouTube videos and I start to put them into categories. Oh, man, this would be really great for unit 2 because this is talking about like movement. This is really good for this, for ratio. So I put in this, so I have like little buckets on YouTube where you can, you can create little playlists. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Here, what's your name?
Chris.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Chris knows what I'm talking about. And so you have this playlist because this is what happens, right? You have this great idea in the fall, something that's you're gonna need for the spring, and then you forget it, right? You don't write it down. And because there's just so many things that are going on in your life. And so I create these lists and these lessons, and I go back, and I go back, and I go back, and I go back, and it helps me to engage because guess what? Showing a kid at middle school a video, that's a hook, right? You know what I'm saying? That's like, oh, I can relate, I can have conversations. Having these turn-in talks, having them frame and get excited before you get into the math, these are all great ways of engagement that your students deserve. Okay, so, okay, cool. Okay. And then you also want to make sure that you can like evaluate the process. Does this actually work? Because what I don't want you to do is to go and be like, oh, we're going to talk about how sucky your life is for the next like 2 hours. And then at the end of the day, you haven't learned the math.
Yep.
Because that's effed up. And that's problematic. And you're actually worse than the lesson that they're doing, right? Because you now told them that their teacher doesn't even think that they even deserve to learn the math. So at the end of the day, it's like, how am I making sure that I'm pushing this math forward? I'm engaging with them. And more importantly, that they're feeling humanized in this whole entire process. So this living will. And when I talked to you about this before, this living will, clearly how many times have I looked at this part here? That's okay. Thank you for laughing, I appreciate that. We're always gonna have like the little people in the audience who like laugh at your thing to help the rest of you fools realize you wasn't laughing at that joke. So this whole living will, right? And I said it's a living will because I told you in the beginning that we're fighting for our lives. And it's not your life, right? It's probably not the life of your child, because they're probably okay. But it's the life of other people's children that depend on you to help them engage. I just read an article that says that students with IEPs are more likely to engage with the juvenile justice system. What? You mean a group of kids that we knew had learning challenges, that we knew might be unengaged in school, end up in the juvenile justice system? Yo, they told us that when we gave them the IEP was like, yo, this child is gonna need you to think differently, this child's gonna need you to try. And what do? We say, well, they can't get it. And now we send them to the juvenile justice system, and then we're like, it's your fault. No, baby. We played a part in that. We played a part in this process because we knew, and we didn't do anything. And a lot of them are like, man, but I'm a product, this is a system. These are the standards, this is what I gotta do. I get that. And you know what? Right now, you gotta play within the game, but also realize that the game is messed up. We need to blow up all the things that we've been told to be true, because it's not. It is not true. I promise you. If a kid does not know, I had gotten into an argument with the teacher. She's like, this kid needs to know the multiplication terms. And I was like, baby, I'm in 6th grade. If he don't know what 7 times 8 is, I don't care, because that's not the standard I'm trying to teach him. Right? So I'm not going to die on this hill, and I'm not going to make this. There's the multiplication chart, baby. If you know how to, let me show you how to do it. That's a 7, that's an 8, and I love her. Because that's not important. That is not important. And if that tool will give that child a little bit more of an oomph to want to come to class, to want to try, then what the hell are we doing? What the hell are we doing? And so this living will is your chance to know that we're not dead yet. Our babies are not dead yet. And every day, you gotta try a little bit harder. You gotta try something different. Because if you don't, then what are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we here? It's showing that thing for the money. Check your bank account. That's not why you're doing this work. You're doing this work so that in some child in 20 years can make a change that will positively impact not just their lives, but the lives of the people that they would never meet. That is our calling. That is our calling. So, one of my colleagues teaches robotics at shout out to you, Ms. Robinson. And he does this thing where he has the kids talk about what classes they like. And this kid was like, I like this place class. That's why they like my math class. Because she takes math and turns it into baking or building a city. Right? Because baking and building a city made an impact on them. Right? Because those are things that are practical. Those things are important. She may not be able to tell you absolute value, but she knows how to do it. Right? She may not be able to say a tape diagram, but she knows how to present it. And that's the important part. Okay, we're gonna try this again. I'm almost done, and I did spend all the time.
Hi, my name is Leonard and I'm a student at Cody. It's been about 5 years since I had a teacher, yet I can still remember the impact her class had on me today. I remember really enjoying math, but being told that it's very common for women to lose interest in the subject during middle school. That statement scared me, because very summer, I felt my liking for the subject began to slip away. But in 6th grade, the encouragement to math to issues in society that I never thought would even be relevant to math. I was and still very am intrigued by the connection she made and taught us. We were learning about relevant topics like school districts while learning about math. It was really cool to experience. It was the first time that I realized math can be applicable to real life and still be interesting. Math is not only about many people buying extra amounts of food, but could represent access people have to healthy food that's also affordable. My curiosity in reading math has really grown from that point on. Now I am making my own connections to social justice and math and pre-calculus. Thank you. Now I am making my own connections to social justice and math and pre-calculus.
So let's talk about this girl, Leanne. So I have a video of Leanne, and when she was a 6th grader, we presented our social justice math at USI. And in this video, she's so cute. She's a little sister. She's like, I didn't know that people didn't have access to grocery stores. I thought you just built Safeways. and she was very serious about that, right? But now look at Leanne's an 11th grader saying that she's intrigued by using math as a way to engage. Leanne's gonna be an engineer. This girl is smart, right? She's going to make it in life. Leanne has all the pluses, right? 4.0 student, always ahead of the curve. But you know what's important? Leanne now has this humanity around using these numbers to change lives, right? So when she gets into these spaces, she's able to challenge people. She's able to let folks know that that is not okay, that is not right, and I'm gonna do everything I can to be a star. And Leanne's gonna buy me a house when she becomes her. I'm just doing this so that you can buy me a house one day. So, why are we fighting for our lives? I hope by the end of this, I touched someone's heart and it's made a little bit of sense to someone. We are fighting for our lives because we are depending on our students to feel good about themselves. Everyone is a math person. Everyone has the ability to see themselves inside of a math classroom. Everyone has the right to make a mistake and get up from next mistakes. It is our job to help them down this gondola of math life. There's gonna be opportunities where they stop, and that's okay. We encourage them, we tell them that we care about them, and we make sure that we push them to be great. Because you're done. You're done. You're done with school. This is no longer important. It's important for them. And so every time you engage with this work, every time you think about these students, make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to help support. It starts with a conversation, a turn talk. You could do a do now, you could do an exit ticket, and that turns into a lesson. And again, if there's subjects that you're like, I'm not ready to take on, there's so many, we cultivated that list of so many different things that you can get started on. You find a homie who will work with you. You find a space, you get started, and you start making a plan. You pretend that your life depends on your students engaging and seeing themselves as math people. Because once you realize that your life depends on it, you're gonna change the way that you go about this thing called education. I'm gonna end by saying that I tell my kids, I am because they were. Your ancestors, I have to tell them all the time, they are people who made sacrifices so that you can be where you are today. So every time you engage, you want to make sure that you are making them proud. Because I am, because they are. Thank you. Language, I think that was kind of like anticlimactic. I'm sorry, I should have like a little closing. It's like 9 o'clock. I thank you. I hope that I rise to slightly rose to the occasion a little bit. That was my plan.
Party now.